What's happening, my fellow geeks and geekettes? Welcome to a brand new episode of Chris's Custom Collectibles, and in honor of the upcoming Toy Story 4, we are going to be pimping out the Buzz Lightyear Thinkway action figure. Funny enough, I actually still have my original Buzz Lightyear action figure that my parents got for my birthday back in 1996. Look at this thing. He is dusty, he is grimy, he is gnarly, but I love him. It's just something I love having around. It just reminds me of, you know, when the first Toy Story came out. I still remember vividly when Dad took me to first see it back in 96. I did have the original Woody doll, but unfortunately he fell apart. So I have the limited edition figure, which is apparently based off scans and digital data from Pixar to create a supposedly 1-to-1 scale replica. I do actually want to get the equivalent of Buzz, but for now, this guy will do, and this guy will do. So in terms of movability, there is next to none. It is literally that, but that is totally fine because this pose right here is going to be the final pose. I want this to be sort of a museum pose, but in terms of the armor, we got to do a cosplay Chris style, guys. We have to go all out. We have to batter it, weather it, make it all rusty, disgusting. In terms of the head sculpt, I will be redoing the eyes and just cleaning them up a bit. I'm gonna try my best, and I put emphasis on trying my best, to get rid of his eyebrows and his little goatee and do little hairs one by one with a very fine brush, and also give him a 5 o'clock shadow. So yeah, for the most part, it's just gonna be a standard museum pose, but just have this looking hyper realistic because this armor has been into battle in space here on Earth, so there is going to be some missing panels of paint. As well as that, I want to try and do some rust effects in certain areas, most notably the abs section here. Now the base itself is going to be very straightforward, just a standard blank base I'll most likely get from Bunnings. Now I do want the Star Command logo on the base itself. I also want it looking quite crude and with a yellow color stippled on like a stencil, and have the actual base itself like sort of a grating or a plating that you'd see on a spaceship. This is something that I really want to make special, even though it's going to be completely far away from the original vision and look of Buzz Lightyear, but that is the point. So the first step before we prime, before we color, before we paint, before we do anything, geeks and geekettes, is we have to take this bad boy apart, and it's actually a few simple screws. I just want to open him up and just see how it's looking on the inside and what we can remove to make painting certain panels a lot easier, as well as removing the head sculpt itself. So that is going to make detailing the head a lot more easier. All right, let's head up to the workshop, screwdriver in hand. Let's get to it. Okay, now that Buzz has been dismantled, the first step is we are going to do some dremeling on the breastplate and the right arm. And the reason being is we're going to have a custom-made laser. This is actually like an audio jack thing I had lying around, so I'm going to be dremeling in a groove where his standard laser would be and mount that on top, and then we're going to have just a standard cord running into the back of the arm, just something a bit gnarly looking. After that, we're then going to be getting rid of the stock standard red wing activation button that came with the figure. As you see, it comes through like that. I'm going to be flattening that, and I've just got a red button that I had lying around, so I just have to do a bit of dremeling in here for it to slot in perfectly like so, and I just think it brings it up a couple of notches. Okay, so after doing all the dremeling for the new laser and the new wing activation button, I've temporarily put majority of the suit back together so we can move on to the next step. So we are going to use a clear plastic primer, first of all, over the entire body, and I am keeping the stickers on there because I need them for the weathering process. I don't want to take them off and put them back on. We're then going to go in with a dull coat. Now the reason why I'm going to be dulling this sheen is because it's going to help the third step, and that is brushing on the Testors Create Effects acrylic wash. It's going to make it a lot easier with a matted surface. It's really going to make it porous and stick in those details of the suit.
So even though I just applied the dull coat, I'm actually going to backtrack 2 steps and attack it with the disc wheel of the Dremel, and we're going to do the battle damage scratches first before moving on to the acrylic wash. I just feel that doing this step now is going to be a lot more beneficial than later on. Now another step before going in and detailing the figure with the acrylic washes, I'm going in with some chrome silver from Model Masters and just detailing the joints. So obviously the back of the knees, the elbows, and also the joints here, and just any other little decals I figure could use a metallic touch. Because this is the cheaper version, it was only $49 as opposed to, you know, the expensive $130 one. These areas were not colored. So after all the basic detailing's done and we go in for the real nitty gritty stuff, I will be doing some rust effects on the joints here and sort of like oil leaks, I guess you could say, around the suit. And as you can see, the battle damage there is looking pretty good, and that was totally on purpose because I want some of these decals just really scuffed and almost torn off his suit. Okay, very happy with how the detailing went, Geeks and Geekettes. So the next step is I've got my chrome silver from Model Masters and a very fine brush. And we're just going in and doing all the detail work for the scuffed areas where there should be raw exposed metal of Buzz's armor. You see right there, we're just going in the details of where I dremeled away with all the battle damage. And what this does is the chrome silver mixes with the acrylic wash, so it kind of does the detailing for you right before your very eyes. So we just want to give the illusion that this armor is just scuffed and just heavily worn, where the paint is coming away and exposing the original metal underneath. Next up, we're going to do some rust effects. So you see right here, I've already gone ahead and started the rust effect method, and all it is getting the exact same fine brush that we used on the suit, plus a brown student acrylic. This is a burnt sienna, and just going to get a very minute bit on the tip of the brush and just go along certain contours of the suit. In this case, the top of the knees. Now, it may look a bit stark at first, not Tony Stark. And then we're going to get another brush and just kind of chip into it, like so. And there it kind of gives the illusion of it's just been worn and it's rusted. And there you go. So vice versa for any certain parts of the suit that you feel need some rust. So I'll probably do the bottom of the knee pads. So I know this looks a little bit out of sorts at the moment, but I am going to be getting a special spray that has sort of a gravel mix mixed into it for the knees and also the boots, so it's all kind of caked up mud from his space adventures. Okay, next step is we have to add some mud and debris around his boots, the knee pads, and anywhere else necessary. So for that, I'm going to be using the Duramax Granite Effect. So I'm actually going to be spraying it onto this paper, getting a brush and stippling it on like so. So I've given it a good shake. Just going to get it and start caking it up around the boots and the knee pads. Now it does take a while to dry, but once it is literally rock hard or granite hard, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so I've been umming and ahhing about the helmet itself. So what I'm going to show you guys is how I'd weather it, but for the final look, I'm not going to include it. And I know some people are going to piss and moan about it, and I totally get it, but I like Buzz's look when the helmet is kind of, you know, folded back inside his suit, whereas with this being a toy, you've got the back part here still popped up and it just looks a bit tacky. But like I said, I'm going to show you guys how I weather it. So much so, it's actually going to be pretty subtle and it's going to be a bit tricky for the camera to pick it up, but I've already started on the back part and we are using the granite spray, but just very sparingly. So much so just that some speckles hit the front of the visors, and then whilst it's still wet, you wipe it and it kind of looks like debris that has slid across the helmet and kind of smushed against his helmet, and it could even look like bugs as a throwback to the mosquito that hits his helmet in the film. Okay, so the camera is struggling to pick up the smear details on the helmet. And just to reiterate, with the final reveal, I will be showing you guys how the dome looks. So it's essentially just a matter of doing that. And then that'll give you a pretty good idea of how everything's gonna look. So overall, I am pretty happy with how the suit is looking. Obviously, I still have to glue in the new button and weather up the buttons that actually activate the voice, but they will go back in once I permanently put him back together and screw everything in place and put the electronics back in. So with that being said, it's time to move on to the head sculpt. Okay, the head sculpt. So this is my concept, Geeks and Geekettes. We're gonna be doing a full 5 o'clock shadow by hand. It's a bit ballsy, it's a bit daring, because I need this to match the dirtiness of the suit and eventually the base, because we want to be as far away from the original look of Buzz as possible, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I love the original look of Buzz, but we are going for something different. Custom Collectables is about daring to be different, Geeks and Geekettes. So that's the idea, this is the plan. So the first step is we have to take some lacquer thinner and get rid of his tiny little goatee and his eyebrows here. So we do have the base for the eyebrows here, but I will be going in and redoing the eyebrows, each little strand by hand, and that is just going to be using something similar to a very 0.2 Sharpie, and going to be doing the same for the 5 o'clock shadow. The way I see it, Buzz has gone through some shit. He has seen some shit, he has experienced some shit, but for the most part, this is the idea. This is what is going to make this head sculpt match the suit itself. So the thinner we are going to be using is Digger's lacquer thinner. With lacquer thinner, you have to be very careful. So I'm going to do a little test just on part of the goatee to make sure that it's not going to affect the rest of the sculpt, even though the skin color is the base color of the casting. I've made sure of that. But once these 3 pieces are removed, then we can get to work. So obviously this eye is going to be covered up, but I will be going back in and doing some work on his iris here. Also very finely going to be adding some veins into his eye. We're going for some hyper realism here, Geeks and Geekettes. It's almost going to be nightmare fuel, I can guarantee you that, but it's a bit of fun. He looks very strange, doesn't he? So I'm getting the exact same brush that I used for the rust work and whatnot on the armor, and I'm just very delicately going in with a Model Masters white, and we're just doing the detail on the eye. You know I mean business when I'm speaking very, very softly. There we go. Okay, it's eyebrow time. As you can see, I've already done the right eyebrow. Now I'm using a 0.2 marker. It's a very fine marker. So to get some realistic eyebrows, I'm not saying these are realistic, but it is definitely up a couple of notches from what they were before, is you have to have these little wild hairs on top, and that kind of just blends it back into the skin and whatnot. So I am following the contour of the sculpture. So we're going to start here and just work our way back until we find that happy medium. And this is going to apply for the stubble as well, even though the stubble is just going to be dots. So what I'm doing now is just going back in with that hot pearl pink, and I'm really just putting some distress under his eyes, like this guy's exhausted or stoned. Either way, he just does not look right. And I'm also going in and doing blotches all over the skin just to kind of give it a bit more depth, as opposed to that kind of one monotone skin tone. Now I have gone in with a Sharpie, drawn the teeth, and just added a little bit of yellow, just with a Model Masters yellow mixed with a bit of white, because the way I see it, Buzz's teeth ain't going to be in perfect condition. There is going to be some yellowing to them. His lovely baby blues, his lovely exhausted, stoned baby blues. So for the most part, Geeks and Geekettes, I'm very happy with the head sculpts. Actually learned quite a bit in terms of trying to get the blotchiness on the skin. And I have to say, this hot pink pearl is amazing. So all the pinking that you see is from the hot pink pearl. It's not a stark color. It sort of has this translucency to it. Now I did actually try to draw some nostrils on him and it just looked ridiculous. It actually made him look like a pig. I'm not kidding. It just looked really weird, even though this whole project is quite weird. So I'm actually going to forego the nostrils. So the next step is we are going to fit the new laser mechanism with the cord running into his suit. We're then going to put the electronics back in the suit as well as the buttons, seal him all up, and then move on to the base. Now just another side note, I am going to seal this head sculpt with the matte sealer that I used at the beginning of the video on the armor itself. While I'm at it, we're just going to hot glue in the wing activation button from the back. And that's going to seal it in, and it's not going to go anywhere. So a little trick that I'm doing is I'm going to get some Model Masters chrome and just go over the hot glue markings, and it's going to give the appearance that the actual new laser has been welded or fused to Buzz's gauntlet. Just a way of covering up that unsightly, kind of tacky looking hot glue. Obviously we needed it on here for reinforcement, and it also acts as welding marks. So it's just been like crudely MIG welded or TIG welded or just fused onto his suit. As if his original laser had stopped working and he quickly needed to kit bash something together. So this is the end result. So once this step's done, we're going to put him all back together and then we're going to move on to the base.
Greetings, I am Buzz Lightyear, Space Ranger.
Quick sound check.
This place needs my protection. Who's in charge here? Look out!
It is now that time with a custom collectible to move on to the base. So this I am actually pretty chuffed with, that I found at Bunnings. It is a black polymer grate. So obviously this is for outdoor plumbing, stuff like that. And this actually is the perfect representation for what I want. I kind of want like a ship dock or a spaceship dock, like a cargo kind of area. And we've got this section here that will act as like sewerage, and it's just going to be all disgusting and just really just gnarly and messed up under there. So I will be utilizing some clear resin that I'll tint green and blue to make it kind of look like sludge or toxic waste that is going through the pipeline, and Buzz will be standing on top here. Now, I'm still figuring out how I want the Star Command logo to go on and how I'm going to apply that. So I will figure something out, but I definitely do want a Star Command logo right here. So first step, peel that off. That was nice and easy. So you see here we have got some insignia of the brand. So just a matter getting the mouse sander and sanding that off, and then we can move on to the next step. So the first two steps in weathering this base is we have to apply some wax and grease remover, especially to the top of the grate where we use the disc sander. So the reason being we're using the wax and grease remover as opposed to the isopropyl alcohol is this gets in the nitty-gritty areas and really gets rid of any dirt, grease, or grime. Not applying this may inhibit the curing of the primer itself, and we need this to cure properly in order for the rest of the washes and paints and whatnot to really stick to it. So I've already poured some in a cup. Just gonna get a brush and brush it all over the entire surface as well as the inside of the grate. Now, usually these grates clip in place and sort of lock in place, but I actually ground them off. So it literally just lifts out like so. And that's gonna make it a lot more easy, especially when we are working on the inside here. Probably give it about half an hour to fully dry, and then we can move on to applying our flat grey primer.
Alright, Geeks and Geekettes, whilst the top grate is drying, we're going to go in, as you can see, I've masked off certain areas. So we're going to make this particular area look like old school concrete piping, and for that we're going to be using the Duramax Granite Effect. You guys probably remember this from the rooftop diorama I did for the NECA Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles video. So same thing, I did apply the clear primer also from Duramax just to make sure it's really going to stick down to the surface. Now the funny thing about this stuff is it will stay absolutely sopping wet for 3 hours, and then after the 3 hour mark it'll just dry rock hard. So we'll be spraying it. I'm going to leave it for a full day because it is quite cold here today. We do have some wet weather. Then after that we can go into detailing the rest of the body, and then we can start to do some resin work on the inside here with some toxic looking sludge resin.
So overall, I ended up having to wait 24 hours for this stuff to dry because it was so cold outside and it's been quite rainy recently. Nice sunny day now, but this stuff is all dried. I'm very happy with the end result. Taking the masking tape off. So the next step is we are going in and staining and weathering the entire piece, just using the black acrylic wash. I'm then going to get a brown student acrylic, and we're going to go in and do some rust effects all around the underside here and around the grate itself. And then we're going to move on to applying the Star Command logo.
Okay, so in terms of doing the Star Command logo on the platform itself, I just printed off an actual logo of Star Command, colored it yellow, printed out some A4 paper, cut off the excess. This is just a piece of model styrene. I'm actually going to be contacted adhering this piece to that piece, and we're going to be using just some spray adhesive. Once it is stuck down, I'm just going to grab this paint roller and just roll it on just so it all gets into the nitty-gritty parts. So you can see there is some texture on here that kind of makes it look like a metal plating. Once it's fully dried, I will go in very carefully and cut away all the excess so we do have this mounted on a nice sturdy base to then glue onto the platform, and then we can go in, weather it, and do all the rust effects that's necessary to blend it back into the platform.
Okay, so one of the final steps with the base and the overall custom collectible is giving the illusion there is like sewage and toxic waste going through the pipe system. So the basis for that is we're going to be using Bee Queen resin. This is from Barnes. This is a champagne drying clear resin. So we've got part A, part B. Mix ratio is 100 to 100. We're then going to be adding some turquoise pigment. This is a transparent pigment. Now on top of that, something out of the ordinary. We're just going to be adding a little bit of green food coloring. What this does is creates a chemical reaction so that the resin itself will froth. Essentially, this is the end result. It froths up and just looks absolutely disgusting, like some sort of toxic waste or sludge. So we're going to be doing a first layer of that through the sewage system of the base. Then after that, I'm going to go back in with another coat, this time just with the turquoise, just a slight little drop, and then fix little things up here and there just to give the illusion that the sewage system is just riddled with just disgusting toxic waste. Then after that, it's just some cleanup and some little details here and there, and then we can do the final reveal. Okay, the last step, and it's like a little bonus round with this diorama, is I want the illusion of tentacles coming out of the ooze or the sludge, whatever you want to call it. So, I got 3 $2 snakes from the cheap shop. Cut the ends of their tails off. We're going to detail them. We're going to do a black wash over all 3 pieces till we find that happy medium with how detailed it looks and just make it look very alien-like. I'm then going to glue them down in each place, and we're going to add more resin around the base of it just to make it kind of look like it's frothing and it's coming out of the primordial ooze. And I will have them poking through the grate here, and I probably will try and wrap one around Buzz's foot just for comedic value. So after that's done, we're going to call it a day. So thanks very much for watching, guys. As always, Mr. Lightyear is available for sale on my Etsy store. I will leave the link down below in the video description. I had an absolute ball pimping this guy out. Something different, something gnarly, just something so outlandish. And like I said, just so far away from the original look of Buzz. I do have a video idea, and please drop a comment below if you guys dig it and want to see it. We all know that one of the new characters in Toy Story 4 is that of Forky. The main story pretty much revolves around Forky and getting him to his destination. So I have seen a Forky action figure at Big W for $29, I think? 29 Australian dollars. So I'm thinking, instead of spending $29 on a Forky figure, let's try and make a Forky figure
for $2.90. Let me know down below if you guys want to see that. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching wherever you are in the world. Have yourselves a cracker of a day. Hope you're well, hope you're happy, be merry, be silly, and until next time, geeks, please always remember, cosplayers do it best.